Well, the germination for the seed that eventually became the book actually is about 20 years old. It came at a very strange time in that I was on a headquarters assignment at the CIA, and because it was a managerial assignment, weirdly enough, I got the responsibility for redesigning the liaison rooms where we would meet with foreign liaison visitors to the headquarters building. And of course, you go out and you talk to the various components that are involved in the meetings, and you try to get what their requirements are. Well, strangely enough, it turned out that one of their comments that came through across the board was, while they have very good relations and the foreign services respect them, there is a feeling that we're a little bit young to be in this type of a game, particularly with a lot of the European and Asian nations that have had organizations for hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, CIA started after World War II. Consequently, after looking at the physical layout and deciding the number of rooms and what have you, I decided it would be very smart, and of course got an appropriate agreement, to name each one of the 3 rooms after an individual who we could correctly and honestly say was one of the founding fathers of American intelligence. So George Washington became the father of foreign intelligence, or positive intelligence as some call it. Benjamin Franklin became the founding father of covert action, and John Jay became the founding father of counterintelligence. Well, it was all good and fine to name the rooms, but then it occurred to someone there was still an educational process involved in this. So I ended up doing some research and writing a pamphlet for the CIA called The Founding Fathers of American Intelligence, which we then put out in the liaison rooms and allowed the foreign visitors to take home with them as a bit of an education and frankly public relations attempt on our part to let them know that we do have a history of experience in the proper use of intelligence in this country. And indeed, it was very useful in the founding event, the Revolutionary War. The pamphlet became quite popular, and I've got to say about 1999, it went on the CIA website, and to this day, it is still downloaded a great deal, and I often find it quoted in books and articles. Although, interestingly enough, it's quite facetious, certainly compared to what the book is. In the case of my research, the first thing I had to do was go through official correspondence. And of course, when I started this almost 20 years ago, all of this correspondence wasn't online. So it took a while to go to the various locations. Luckily, being based in Washington for a period of time, I had access to the National Archives, to the Library of Congress, what have you, and Mount Vernon. Now, I did have one significant advantage, and that happened to be the CIA's historical collection. Housed in the CIA library is a separate area that contains all the literature on intelligence from all around the world. And in the case of the Revolutionary War, I was able to find copies of documents of significant value that caused me not to have to travel as much, let alone all the publications, research papers, master's thesis, PhD thesis, publication articles worldwide that really allowed me to have a much better perspective on it than if I had just been going to the usual library and archival facilities. Mm-hmm. This gives a perspective on the war that you don't find in most books about it or about personalities involved. When you read this book, I think it is going to give history buffs a new reason to look back at, say, certain military battles and ask whether Washington's behavior or his reaction to this intelligence or his attempt to get that intelligence, what effect did that have on that portion of the military campaign? If you're interested in his roles in leadership, how did he act? How did he manage some of these? At what point was he able to focus only on the logistics and trying to create an army? And to what degree was that at the expense of intelligence and subsequently military affairs? And you find this, I think, for anybody who would look at any aspect of the revolution from a military, leadership, economic, or political role. It's simply a different overlay that I think a historical buff will look at and will say, it's another aspect to consider in this probably the most profound event in the founding of America. It's a good teaching tool. If you want to know how human intelligence operates, when you get done reading this book, you're going to have a very good feel for selection process, personality traits to look for, type of personal discipline needed, how you communicate, how you elicit, how you select targets. So I think it's almost a textbook in that sense. My approach with this was that I really wanted to create, and I hope I have, a one-stop shop for someone who wants to look at the subject of intelligence in the Revolutionary War. Now, in doing that, my takeaway would be you come away with a better understanding of intelligence. And more importantly, nowadays intelligence has almost a political connotation to it. When you talk about secret or intelligence, you tend to think of it either pejoratively or in a manner of, well, they want this or they want that. This is a very neutral time we're talking about, yet all the principles are still there. And also, I think it puts to the lie after 250 years that all intelligence are failures, because you'll always hear any intelligence officer explain that you only hear about the failures, you never hear about the successes. Well, it's 250 years later, but you're going to hear about the successes in this case, and well worth it. There's also one other aspect that I think is vitally important here. I do include the role of the African American in intelligence activities. And that's a very underreported role, one where there's very little in the way of documentation, and where I must admit it took me a much larger amount of time to do the actual research than what we end up as the finished chapter on that. But again, the concept that everybody was involved and everybody did their part, often for very strange reasons that were often counterintuitive.